what's up, everybody? This is Dr. Phil 2, and you are listening to Shaping Your New Start Education Podcast. We're a podcast about everything education. We want to be of value to every educator out there. We're so excited that you have joined us, that you're listening, that you're watching. We have a very special guest today. We've got a powerful discussion, and we're about to have. You don't want to miss this. You don't want to miss this. So right after this, we're going to bring Dr. Jill Brown on. But before that, listen, we just want to let you know to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Shaping Your New Start. We also would love for you to go over to Dr. Phil _2. Follow us there for all content, everything that we bring. And we want to let you know also that this podcast is sponsored by McGuire Wear Fashion Your Faith. Here we go. Right after this, we bring on our very special guest, Shaping Your New Start. Hello, Dr.
Hello.
Brown. How are you?
Good. In fact, I'm so thrilled to be here. It's exciting.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Now, you are the Assistant Superintendent for Special Services in the Blue Springs District. All right. So earlier in our conversation, we clarified that this is in Kansas City, Missouri. I believe I've been through the, I've really got to get my my geography together, because I believe I was in town in Missouri, not Kansas. So whatever it was, beautiful experience, beautiful neighborhood. So glad you're on this show. And we're here to talk about special education. Now, as an administrator, as myself, there's just a lot of misnomers about special education. And my mother had once been a principal and also try to serve in that area as well. Let's start with the positive. We'll get to the myths, but what is special education and what do we really need to know about it?
Absolutely. Thank you. Special education is for students with a range of disabilities that they need to qualify under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities with Education Act. It is a range of specialized instruction services, and it very much varies about what a student's unique individual needs are. So we are calculating services and the time that we need to spend based on what a child really needs. And in old school terms, it was always about what deficits they have. And now we've been trying to spend more and more focus on leveraging the positives to work on some of the things that we need to work on in our schools for their success in life.
That's right. And how much success do you see coming out of that? I mean, when you really pour into this program, how much success do you see come out of students after they've been through it?
I think it is amazing what you can see. And it's about working on the independence for our students. It's so that they can, live their lives like all of us do, get married, have kids, whether they want to work in a full-time job, whether they want to go to school. It's all about the services that we provide. As I like to tell my staff, that from early childhood through high school, we're working on those skills to make them successful after they graduate. And we have a really good success rate where we're at. Our kids in special education who graduate, and then where they go to live and work. And it's about trying to meet the needs of what those kids want, not just what I think is success. What do individual kids want to see for their lives, and trying to put them in the driver's seat of their life.
Wow. Wow, I love it. I love it. And it's just coming from a different perspective. It's not necessarily and actually this concept can go across the board and be
Mhm.
successful, right? Just the way we articulate our teaching, like every student learns differently. I was a student that, we didn't really have special education in
Mhm.
our system growing up, but I learned differently. I didn't
Right.
learn the same as every other student around me. So I had to figure my way out a little bit longer. It took me a little bit longer to figure some things out than others, but eventually I figured it out.
Yeah, I think it's about honoring student voice. I think that is one of the most important things we could do is honor where they're at, what they're looking for. And then I think from that, and you'll hear the term neurodiversity. It's
Mm,
about really thinking through that there isn't a certain way everybody has to be. So just because somebody has attention deficit disorder, or maybe they blurt out in class, I'm not trying to change everything about that student.
yeah.
It's trying to hone that into, okay, what kind of careers is that going to be a positive for? That they're going to need that kind of energy that this kid has, and how do we hone it towards there? And it's about a kid with autism, and it's about, let's say we have a kid who does flapping. I'm not trying to stop that. It's not in
Mm,
anybody's way. I'm not trying to change kids from being who they are. It's about really trying to, if it's not harmful, why am I trying to make everybody be the same?
wow.
And there's no reason to do that in disability land. What do they need? And how
Yeah.
can we get them there for what they want? And that
Wow.
just the strengths that I have doesn't mean I'm not looking for cookie cutters of me in life either when I go hiring. So, what is it really going to be for these kids? And that is really it, in all areas with all kids. It's getting to know your kids, it's that relationship with
Mhm.
them, and it's helping them see that not everything about them is a deficit. We all have deficits. What is your strength that I want to build on? You are an awesome human, and how can we really find a way to harness that into what works for you? I work with some awesome adults with ADHD. They do things I don't. And those are the kinds of things that we need to think past instead of always thinking, oh, well, that person, they're going to talk a long time or they're going to be distracted. It's no, there are actually really good skills that different people have. Sometimes their ability to focus can be better than mine. And that's what we got to take perspective on and stop thinking about everybody's got to be the same.
Wow. I'm telling you, this is not just for special education.
It is
This
not.
is this is education all at once. Somebody said, my brother said it's a good perspective, as a great perspective. Somebody else said go Royals, by the way. Just that's right.
Absolutely. Got to go for our Royals and Chiefs this weekend.
And Chiefs.
We got
Wow.
to get them
Wow. I don't
all.
know how y'all feel
Absolutely.
still in nation, but Chiefs, I don't
We're
know.
in the
I don't
Midwest.
know.
Patrick Mahomes just bought us what a burger here. We haven't had anything like that. So, you know what? We're super excited. See what we can get.
What a burger. Oh
I
man, I
don't
thought that was just a
we're
Texas thing.
Midwest. I don't know what everybody's got. So, there's some things we
Wow.
have.
I
So,
love it.
yeah.
I
So,
love it.
I really think everything's about the relationship. And you're right. I'm not talking just about special education. What I am trying though to help people understand is that it includes special education.
Yeah.
That it isn't about that there's something for everybody else and then there's something separate for special education. It's
Yeah.
no, there are things that our students need that perhaps a lot of other students don't,
Yeah.
but they're people and they're students and they have strengths and they have desires and they have wants. And we have to reframe for all kids, but even especially for mine, what is success, and quit acting like it is a certain thing. It isn't college for everybody. It
That's
it
true.
isn't even a full-time job for everybody. Some people are looking, they want to raise their families. Other people get to raise their families. Why do we think that people with disabilities maybe shouldn't, or that's not appropriate for them? So really trying to think through it. And I'm not going to pretend everything is sunshine and roses all the time, because it certainly isn't. We have students who have some significant needs. I just want to make sure that we're valuing every one of our students in that process and trying to help them with what do they need for that dream that they have to get there, because our students got a little bit more roadblocks than perhaps some other people are. Or maybe when they have a stumbling block, as I assume probably almost all of us had stumbling blocks. I had 6 majors in college. What I could do though was figure out when one major I decided I didn't want to do every day, I could navigate that system and figure out what to do to get into this other major. Some of our students aren't able to do that. So we've got to give them that skill so that they know how to navigate systems, because our society is a lot of systems and they don't all serve our children well, and they're
That's
not
right.
going to serve them well as adults. So how do we help them with that? So that's a lot
You
of
are
what
correct.
we try to be about.
I love it. I love it. That is wisdom right there. Now, I want to say
Mhm.
to the audience, I love your videos. Okay, are you on TikTok as well, or is it just
I put
Instagram that you
some
do
of
the
my
videos?
stuff on TikTok, but I am mostly about Instagram right now because I'm still working full time. So trying to find
Yes.
time for all this stuff can get super interesting. I have been
Oh yeah.
caught in my car videoing where the custodians come out to see if I was okay. You know what? I've stayed here at night doing it. It's, you're trying to fit it in.
That's right. And listen, if you want to see her videos,
Mhm.
like her on Instagram, follow her on Instagram at Dr. Jill Brown, as you see it right there, at Dr. Jill Brown, and you'll see some interesting videos. Now, one of the things that caught my
Mhm.
attention is the myths of special education. So let's go down some of the myths. You have a whole bunch of
Mhm.
videos on the myths of special
I do.
education. So let's go down a few of them.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to talk about the myths than it is about what it is so that we can kind of throw some out. So, we talk a lot about special education is not a place. It's not a place down the hall. It's not in some grant place that nobody ever goes. Special education could occur anywhere in a school building and should. There should not be separate spaces for our students. Sometimes
Mm,
I also hear things like about what strategies work with special education students. There really are just strategies. There isn't anything special about that. It is that we get the intensity and we get very individualized. But the training that general education teachers have on ways to differentiate and meet the needs of different kids work for our students. So our students need some more stuff sometimes too. But really our kids can benefit from the same thing that all kids benefit from, and really should. um, Deficit thinking, I think sometimes thinking that because you're in special education you must not be smart, you might not be successful. And I want to combat all of that. That it's not. It's our students have lots of strengths in this world, and so it isn't a shame to be in special education. There are more people that were in special education than people realize. There are some states where it's like 15% of their school population. Where I'm at, it's 11% in my
mm,
district. I just figured it out again, so
wow.
I can see where we're at. And so
Yeah.
that's a lot of kids. And it's not that it is a shameful place, and it's that there are supports in place for people, and you're going to work alongside people in this life and not realize that they were receiving services in special education because they don't need to disclose. We talk a lot with our kids about when you disclose, who you should disclose to, if you should disclose. It's very personal. But there are all types of people that we have no idea that they were in special education for a little bit, for a long time. There's a variety. So I try to get the idea that when you say the term special education, that means something. Just like I like to combat free lunch means something. That's a free lunch kid. That doesn't mean anything. I was a free lunch kid for a part of my growing up. I don't know what that
Right.
means. So a
Right.
special education kid doesn't mean anything to me either. That does not a descriptor for anything. So trying to get past some of those types of things as well. And I think too that the other thing I hear is we have kids that smart, or that we have kids that are just nothing but trouble. That's where behavior kids go. Well, it's not where all behavior kids go. We have behaviors everywhere.
That's right.
But they're not a bunch of bad kids. And some of my kids who got in trouble, who made poor choices, were actually some of the most fun kids I ever taught. And it was trying to hone that for good sometimes. It's like, let's think a minute before you go do this, because look about what that did last time. But it's not a place with a bunch of bad kids. They're not scary. If you're afraid of a certain population, so for me, I never taught medically fragile kids. And so when I was first coming up, I made sure I made myself go to the building and spend time in the classroom until I was no longer bothered. Because most of the time we're bothered or we're scared is because we haven't experienced what that is, and they're people. And so really spending that time to understand that kids are kids, and they all deserve a good education, a good life,
Mhm.
and without being told what they are, who they are.
Yes.
So that's a little bit.
Yes. Absolutely. And those are critical points for everybody to understand. And it's not that everybody doesn't know it, but
Mhm.
sometimes we don't discuss these specific areas when it comes to education. And sometimes people may have a generalization about education, about teachers,
Mhm.
about educators, about education, period. Some people
Yeah,
that aren't necessarily inside education may not know the ins and outs. What
absolutely.
what really got you passionate about special education? What was your leading to this point?
Well, I'm a little unusual because I was not passionate about special education. And so sometimes that's why I bring another perspective. My undergraduate, I was going to be an English teacher. Like I said, I had 6 different degrees. My last one was that I was interested in. I didn't get 6 different degrees. Education was the last one I landed on. So went to school to be an English teacher. I was actually the teacher in one of the classes I take right before I did student teaching. It was special ed for the general educator, and it was an
Hmm.
auditorium classroom. And I was one of the people who, it's embarrassing to say, I actually raised my hand in that class and I said I wasn't going to do this stuff because my content was too important.
Wow.
And my professor, Dr. Paulistino, who I ended up working for a little bit later, she challenged me to go to some special education classrooms.
Hmm.
And the challenge didn't feel much like a choice, but she challenged me to do that, and I did. I spent time at a junior high school, and I spent time at a high school, observing what was going on, the students that we had, and what teachers did. And I won't say that that changed my mind yet, but it made me go, okay, it isn't what I thought it was. I grew up in a very small town. I don't recall there being a special education teacher. I don't ever recall seeing anybody. So I did my student teaching, and I taught at high school level, and I taught honors English, and I taught the regular 12th grade English. And I didn't like honors English students. And
Mm.
I probably was one of those growing up. So it was a lot of time that was spent just talking about what points they wanted to get on a test or assignment. And I didn't feel like I was needed. I felt like those kids would be fine without Jill Brown. They didn't need me. But I enjoyed my senior class that I found out while I was student teaching that had a lot of students with disabilities in it. It just didn't have a special ed teacher. So I actually went back right away. And went straight into my master's in special education,
Mm.
and started working partway through my master's. I got a job in special education and started working that way. That is my only special ed degree is my master's. My other two, my specialist and my doctorate are both in general ed as well. Because I really feel like it's part of my job to marry parts of a system, and that and I needed to understand when we break apart state assessments, or when we're looking at money wise, or all these different pieces, and understand how to try to marry these the best that we can so that we don't have just separate silos. So I don't come from it and talking about a relative I had in special education. I'm coming from just learning what fed me and where I thought I was actually needed. Never mind the fact, I think part of what we deal with sometimes in special education is people feel like maybe we're not as strong, which is why we're in special education. And not true. So I could take advantage of, with my English ed, teach self-contained English classes for kids. And so it really was that idea about I'd like to help kids figure out how they learn and break
Mm,
that down for them. What works for you, and try to really get into their head about how they see it, because they didn't see it the same way as me. And that only fed me back and helped learn that people are different, and also helps make you realize sometimes your blessings. There are things in life that come easy for me that don't for somebody else. And you need to, you really need to realize that not everybody sees things the same way, and that's okay. And learn from our students. So it really was through where I really felt I was needed in this life. And that's how I ended up there.
wow, that's powerful. So, give us at least three techniques on how you reach somebody to really show who they are and bring out the best in them. At least like three techniques.
Yeah. Well, all of them involve some time. If you're really going to reach people, there is no easy. I think the biggest things are finding some time for one-on-one with kids about something that they're interested in. So if it's about reading books, you can really delve down into what is it that they're interested in reading. In high school, I went to people's jobs. I ate at the restaurants where they were working. I did wherever they went. I went there to see them in action, and then we talked about what skills that they felt like they needed that they weren't as good at on their job. For some of my kids, that was reading, or we practiced memorizing the menu for where they were where they're working at a restaurant, because memorization was hard. Spending time doing that, going to their games. It is all those little pieces, and sharing some of yourself. And I don't mean oversharing, but sharing a little bit about who you are as a person. So I would share like how I grew up, and that was different than how they grew up. Because as I mentioned before, I'm from North Dakota. I grew up in North Dakota. So when I was talking to people in Missouri about how I grew up, and I didn't live on a farm, but there's tons of farmland in North Dakota. So very different, and really trying to figure out how to connect on a people basis, but then also how to have fun. And I don't mean the kind of fun where you're not teaching anything, but when it comes to something where you might be disappointed at something they've done, or you might be the principal comes to your room and your kids are not doing what you want them to be doing and you're embarrassed, it is about taking that in stride and finding ways to have fun with it. It's like, hey, man, that teacher is going to come in here, and can you at least pretend to have your pencil on the paper? Just that little bit for me will be super helpful. And that was so much better than telling somebody they need to get to work. That they
Yeah.
don't respond to. And so really trying to find that, I like you as a person. And
Mm,
they knew I was their teacher. We weren't friends. I mean, it's a teacher relationship, but that I cared for them always makes a difference. I've never felt like I wasted time getting to know a kiddo, whether it was on where they were at, or whether it was at school.
that's right.
But I think it's really important to see kids. I tell people all the time, you're going to spend the time. Do you want to spend the time in the positive stuff in the relationship, or do you want to spend it in the behavior stuff on the other end and getting into power struggles with kids? And you want to spend that time in those positive relationships and show them that the society, people can be different. When I see a kid, when I've had kids that have been oppositional, I always like to think through, and I taught mostly secondary. I never taught younger than eighth grade. Um, for me, it was always about there's probably part of that oppositional that was created in our systems at school, and we're a part of that. And so, even though I might not have done it, I have to take part in that and realize, okay, why is this their reaction to what I'm saying? Is it
Wow.
because people don't listen to them? Is it because people assumed ill intent about a kid just because maybe they've been in trouble before? And really trying to make those connections. I know that's three things that are all one thing, but I can't overstate the relationship and spending time with kiddos.
Yes. Yes. And that's critical. As we were talking about mentorship last week,
Mhm.
That's part of that system, that one-on-one. And sometimes the smaller school, the student gets the best out of it rather than a larger class, or but we try to find ways to
Mhm.
meet that need intimately, so that we can get the best result. So I think those are
Absolutely.
powerful tips. For
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that was all I was gonna say.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Now, for a
Mhm.
teacher that wants to get involved in special education, what are some
Mhm.
things you want to tell them?
That wanna get involved in special education. It's a great it's a great career no matter how you come at it. So, even if your degree is not in teaching, there are programs to go back in and to go get, whether it's college classes, sometimes you can take a test and do it. One of my staff members that I've hired recently who is killing it, um, undergraduate is not in teaching at all and is doing a fabulous job at the beginning of their career because relationships is where they're at.
Wow.
Um, I think it's just don't be scared, and don't be scared about that job in special education you might take. Somebody tells you that's a behavior classroom, it doesn't mean all the kids in there are bad. That's not what that means. They're struggling with their emotions and behaviors. It doesn't mean it's a bunch of bad kids sitting in a room together. We gotta quit thinking that way, about what's going on with our kiddos. But it's call districts, call university. They will give you ideas of programs to go through. If somebody called our district, we would talk to them about, well, we know this university. They will work with you on these courses to get there. This university will work with you on like some study techniques to get to be able to take the test, and we can give some ideas for that. And just know it is a career that feeds you back every
Hmm.
single day. And I'm an
Yeah.
administrator, so some of what I do is not the pleasant stuff all the time.
Right.
But my job feeds me. Helping my staff feeds me.
Yes.
Helping them
Yes.
help kids feeds me. Working with parents, even parents who are mad,
Yeah.
that feeds me and trying to develop that relationship. And so it is a great thing and not something to be scared of.
Absolutely. And I really wish more districts would specialize in special education,
Yeah.
because you have some districts where there's a need, but some people can't even move to that district because they don't really fulfill those needs.
Yeah.
And so I really wish more education systems would create a balance in a variety of districts, so families can live in certain neighborhoods,
Yeah.
without having to look for, okay, what meets my child's needs the most.
You're
And
right. We take a lot of calls from families trying to figure out where to live.
that's right. That's right. I'm sorry we're blocking. Let me see. I'm a special education, and my advice is to have a lot of patience and
Mhm.
to break everything down to the simplest steps. I agree with having relationships with students, meet the kids where they
Mhm.
are, get families involved too. Yes, I am fed daily with my students and families.
I
That's
bet it.
that's critical in teaching anyway.
Yeah.
If you can break the most difficult thing down to the simplest form, right? Isn't that what we do when we feed babies? We break down that
It
food
is.
and serve it as simple as possible. But really, in teaching, if you can take the most difficult subject and break it down to the most simple concept, people would understand.
Yeah, and you know what? We talk to people too. You can do that with behavior and emotions too, and break it down into what was I feeling? How did I get there? Because sometimes that's what our kids do. What works in academics breaking down works in behaviors and emotions too. And we just have to think not everybody has those experiences when they come in the door.
Wow. Dr. Jill Brown, thank you so much. Listen,
Thank you.
we're looking forward to your book, okay?
Absolutely.
So you can believe that when your book is published, I'll be promoting it for sure.
Well,
I'm
thank you
always
so much.
absolutely. I'm a supportive of what you do, and a supporter of special education and all that it brings to each district. Again, if you're educator, you're administrator, um, do you find it difficult to find funds for special education?
Always. And you know what's interesting is, in general ed, they can write a lot of grants and things like that, but we don't have a high enough student population to qualify for many of them. So that makes things really hard. The federal government pays very little from their promise about what they would pay. So you're around that 16% that you get from federal. And then it varies
Mm,
there from where you live. So some districts get more from their state because their local doesn't have as much money, and
that's right.
some are more locally funded. We're more locally funded where I'm at, but our difficulty with, in base with, other districts around us is that we have less big business where I'm at. And, big business is what funds a public school, and who you have in your neighborhood. So I hate
Wow.
that there are so many differences. I want to allow the uniqueness of where we live, but I
Yeah,
hate that at the same time, everybody is really shoehorned by the money that comes in from whatever businesses might be there, or if there aren't any.
that's right.
And what that is, and then you're funded by, your the people in their homes. And then
Yeah,
you're relying on state funds, which state funds get cut a lot. When it gets
right.
down to it, they might take money away. And so I think we all have great ideas. It's funding for them.
Yeah,
People cost money. That's what all
that's
schools
right.
spend the most money
That's
on
right.
is people. And, I would hire lots more people if we could figure out a way to do that long term without bankrupting us. But
So yeah.
and I really worry, at Missouri, where we're at, is one of the lowest funded states in the
Wow.
US. And so it really is trying to think through about what we value, and our actions and our words show us what is valued. And sometimes I worry in our society what we're valuing right now with our
Yeah,
words and actions.
yeah.
And
That's the
our
word.
kids, frankly, I mean, I know it's weird, kids are our future. They're the ones who are going to help take care of us or not.
Yes. Yes.
They
Yes.
might
I feel
decide
like
no.
we're feeders. I feel like we're feeders for that next generation. We're
Mhm.
feeders for that next teacher, that next
Mhm.
instructor. And so, that next superintendent, we're feeders for them. We're
Yeah.
the ones that being the example and showing them how to do it and what to do. So, all you millionaires out there that are watching this podcast,
Yeah. Oh,
okay,
yes.
listen, we're gonna need you to donate. Hey, this is a good statement here. Children get misdiagnosed sometimes because schools want money. It's scary. So, that can also happen.
It can happen. It could happen for a variety of reasons. You might have
Hmm.
more suburban schools who are over identifying race. That is really more about maybe some experiences that students had or didn't have when they were younger. There are lots of reasons that go into misdiagnosis. Or, gosh, in some places, our curriculum is sneaking so much above developmental norms that kids that shouldn't qualify for special education are starting to look like they are, when really they're probably closer to maybe an average or a low average, because we're
Right.
sneaking that curriculum way too high above
Yeah.
what a kid should be expected to do. And then for your kids that are high flyers, what it causes for them is anxiety, because
Mm,
we're keeping everything above that developmental level. So I really worry with our focus on test scores. And don't get me
yes.
wrong, I want accountability. But
Yes.
focus on test scores is an anxiety
Yes.
creator for our kids that are really good in school. And for our kids that aren't, it just feels like a failure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have got to figure out what it is that we're doing in our
I'm
system.
just trying to figure out who's around the table discussing
Mhm.
test scores. Like, who
Oh, I
is
know.
it at the table? Who is it that is putting all this data together to say, yeah, we need to focus on these test scores? When every educator that I'm listening to is like, listen, this is not the highest form
Yeah,
of accountability for how you're
I
learning. Like
agree.
you said, so many people learn differently, and
Mhm.
I'll be doing another podcast based on education versus trade and
Yeah.
things like that. Because we really need to get down into the crux of it, of every avenue of education, and grow from there. So
And spend
I
more
think
time on
what
mentorship and jobs.
yes, yes, mentorship and job. There you go.
Absolutely.
Listen, it can work. It can work. Different
Mhm.
systems can work, and we have proven that it can. And what you're proving is that within the infrastructure, that is given to you, you're finding creative ways to bring out the best in your students.
We are trying and we're looking all the time. That's why I don't hire people like me. I'm looking for all sorts of people and looking for ideas. And,
Yeah.
I think that is the most important thing we can do. It doesn't matter. I just finished my 23rd year and I'm starting my 24th, and I don't have all the
Wow.
answers. I love my new teachers. They've got
Yeah.
freshness. I try to steal their good ideas.
Right.
We got to have all sorts of people out there to figure out what do we need.
Yeah.
I don't need to teach them about the penny. We're in debit cards
Come on.
now. So
Right.
it's trying to find that, and we have just got to figure out what to do and make real change, not just word change.
Yes. Yes. Powerful. Powerful. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for your
much.
time.
I
Absolutely.
enjoyed talking
Absolutely.
with you, and I love what you're trying to do here. It's great.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, everybody, you heard it. This is a special education podcast right here. And we want you to share this out. So, we want you to share this video. Go subscribe to Shaping Your New Start. You can also follow Dr. Jill Brown on Instagram or on Twitter. You put a 1 after the Brown on Twitter, but you can still put Dr. Jill Brown and find her on Twitter, on Instagram. And this is our special podcast tonight. Will be on different Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. So you can listen to the rebroadcast of this, or go to our page on YouTube, our channel on YouTube, Shaping Your New Start. This is a Shaping Your New Start podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Thank you so much for your input. And thank you so much for your support to education. Listen, educators around the world, we salute you. We appreciate you, and we believe in you. Thank you. It's a thankless job. And we wish the best to you and scholars all around the world. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. Everybody, go out there and shape your new start.